All right, I think we're good to get started. Nancy, can you share the poll results? I'm curious who we have. Okay, awesome. So we have just over 50%, 51% of you. This is your first time learning how to use Visual Explorer. So welcome. We're excited that you're here. And then we have about a third of you who have started using Visual Explorer. We're also happy to have you, of course, and then 15% that you have learned a little bit about it, but you still haven't used it. So we're excited to walk through this very important topic today with you all about data-driven storytelling and how you can do that with Visual Explorer. So some key things to keep in mind as a way to kind of frame our discussion today. The topic of data-driven storytelling is a really big topic, and there is a lot of information on it and a lot of experts that talk about data-driven storytelling. And what we're doing today is we're going to focus on how you can use Visual Explorer to support and really power your data-driven storytelling within your organization. So we're excited to walk through that. And I think what you'll find is that a lot of what we're teaching you in today's webinar is going to correlate and mirror a lot of the other thought leaders on this topic. And we're just showing you today how it can all happen within Mode's Visual Explorer. So by way of introduction, we want to introduce ourselves to you. So my name is Jennifer Spoolma, and I'm Customer Education and Enablement Manager at Mode. And so I have a lot of fun getting to work on customer education initiatives like this webinar series and Mode University and other things of that nature. And then, of course, we have the wonderful Johnny Kelly on today's webinar. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. My name is Johnny. I'm a solutions engineer here at Mode. I help current customers and future customers find value in the product. So some of you may have seen me during the sales process or during your time as a Mode customer. So nice to see you again. And for those who I haven't met, thanks for joining.
Awesome. And we do want to make sure that you are aware that this webinar that you're attending today, this is the fourth and final webinar of our Visual Explorer webinar series. And so if this is the first time you're learning about Visual Explorer, just know that there are 3 other fantastic webinars that Johnny and I had the pleasure of presenting over the past several weeks. And so you can find all of these on Mode's website. And Nancy, if you want to share the link directly, so that if you follow that link, you can download these webinars and watch the replays on demand. So you can always access this content even if you didn't get to be there live with us. And then finally, I want to make sure that you're aware that we do have more Visual Explorer resources available to you in Mode University. So for Mode customers, you can find our quick start guide to Visual Explorer, which is a course walking you through how to use Visual Explorer. We also have some practice field guides there that actually teach you how to build different types of visualizations and what data you need to create those visualizations in a step-by-step manner. And then we also have some on-demand training there as well. So yeah, I see Nancy also already sent the link out to that, so you can head there if you're curious to learn more after today's webinar. Okay, now our agenda for today. So we're going to start with a recap of Visual Explorer. So particularly for the 51% of you that have never seen Visual Explorer before, we're going to make sure that we're all kind of starting on the same page of what it is we're talking about. And then we're going to jump into a real world scenario of data-driven storytelling using Visual Explorer. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Johnny and I have a little bit of a surprise for you with this scenario. So it's going to be fun. And then we'll kind of end it with some best practices for data-driven storytelling. And of course, answer any questions that you have. So as we're going through the content today, please feel free to use the question and answers feature in Zoom to submit your questions, and we can keep track of those and answer them at the end. All right, so let's start with our recap of Visual Explorer. Johnny, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jennifer. So for those of you who have never used Visual Explorer before, at its core, the Visual Explorer is really just a flexible graphing environment. So just like how we have grammar in English that allows us to combine words to form interpretable sentences, the grammar of graphics, which is what the Visual Explorer is built upon, provides a rule set that enables you to configure your visualization in numerous ways, just like you see here on Jennifer's slide. This flexibility is why the Visual Explorer is great for data exploration, whereas Mode's quick charts are better for when you know what specific chart type you want, and they provide a quick way for you to create it. Another great benefit of the Visual Explorer is the customizability of the visualizations themselves. So you can get more specific when it comes to both formatting and coloring than you would with quick charts. That's kind of a history of Visual Explorer and a kind of background of it.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I think, to the point of our webinar today, what you're going to see is just the power of Visual Explorer to really empower data-driven storytelling to take place because of how Visual Explorer works and the flexibility you have to dive into your data and learn more about it. The stories that your data, are housing or can tell you really are able to come to life. So let's get into our real world scenario. So we would like to invite you to Mode's Theater. In this demo portion, we're applying some of the feedback that we actually got from an attendee of last week's webinar, where they're like, hey, it'd be great to see some more real world type scenarios and see how people actually use the data and use Visual Explorer rather than, a perfect planned out demo. So Johnny and I we planned out this webinar, but we are going to be taking on different roles of stakeholder and a data analyst and actually show you how Visual Explorer can be used in a real world scenario and play out. So we're going to be taking on our different roles throughout the webinar. So we're going to walk through what you should be looking for. But as a quick note, since we're going to be kind of hopping in between being the characters we're playing and being trainers of Mode, we both have our hats here. So when we put on the hats, then we are Mode trainers and we're going to be explaining why we're doing things. And then when we take them off, then we're just playing the characters. So let's start with the act. So this is a 3-act theater that you're joining. And in the first act, what we're going to be showing you is the power of Visual Explorer to enable stakeholders to explore their data, ask questions, and gain insights all by themselves, right? Without having to go to their data analyst. So this shows, a huge amount of power with Mode's Visual Explorer in and of itself. I will be performing Act 1, and the character that I'm going to be is a director of customer success. And so I'm a stakeholder reviewing a report. And the things that we want you to kind of be looking for and the key takeaways is you'll see me review a report that's been built in Visual Explorer. And then you'll look for when I have questions about the data and things that I'm curious about. I'm easily going to be able to learn more about the data behind it using Visual Explorer. And when I do that, it's inherently leading me to data-driven insights because it's the data that's causing me to ask questions, explore it more, learn more, and come up with new and better questions to ask to lead to my insights. And then finally, we want you to look for how Visual Explorer is going to be helping me to identify the specific questions that once I get those answers to those questions, it's going to actually help my team improve. So it's going to make a measurable impact on my business. And then we'll move into Act 2. And in Act 2, we're going to be showing you how an analyst can take a consultative role to help shape a data-driven story. And so in Act 2, Johnny and myself, we will be performing this together, having a conversation where Johnny is going to be the data analyst, and I'm going to stay in that character of being a director of customer success and the stakeholder. And the key takeaways that we want you to look for in Act 2 are the questions that Johnny is going to ask me, and kind of how he is using questions to help himself understand the use case and the end goal of what I initially asked him for and the analysis I asked him for. And then also kind of how he helps me as the stakeholder to articulate the decision that I'm actually trying to make so that the analysis leads to a business outcome. And then Act 3, you're going to see the analyst's workflow and Visual Explorer. And you're going to see how this is different from the stakeholders' workflow in Visual Explorer, because Visual Explorer, it is powerful enough to do all of your data analysis without needing to write any additional SQL code. So you're going to see how Johnny will walk through using Visual Explorer from an analyst perspective. And the key takeaways here are that even for an analyst that can write great SQL code, Visual Explorer opens up new avenues for exploring a data set and arriving at insights quickly. And then finally, Johnny's going to make use of several Visual Explorer's features to create a visualization that tells a clear story for the stakeholder and allows me to make a decision on that data quickly. So Johnny, anything you want to say before we get started?
No, I'm excited to jump into these roles.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so let the story begin. All right, so this is the report that I have. And I just want to quickly remind you that you can access this report yourself because it is in the community workspace. So Nancy just sent a link to this report, so you can look at it. This is all dummy data, so it's a great kind of place to explore and learn how Visual Explorer works. Okay, and now I'm in character. So this is a report that I have that shows me a handful of different customer success metrics. In the top here, I see some information about onboarding and adoption, kind of how my product is doing. I see like my monthly active users, average days in onboarding, and then broken down by segment here, I can see some adoption metrics, like how many average days in onboarding for these different market segments and the average seat adoption each of them have. You can see how my seat adoption targets are going. And then down here towards the bottom, I have some retention information. So I have some NPS feedback that's also broken down by segment over here. And so I'm able to see a lot from this. Like, for example, up here, something that caught my eye is how as my days in onboarding goes down across the segments, the average seat adoption actually goes up. So that's something that's pretty interesting to me. And down here with my NPS feedback, I'm also interested about this. Like I had it on my list of things to do to kind of look in and check in on how my NPS is doing. And so right now, when I'm looking at this report here, I can see each of these bars has a number on the top of it, and it's showing me how many responses were recorded for that market segment and the score category. So whether they were a detractor, passive, or promoter. But what I can't really tell from this view right now is, comparing the market segments to each other, how well are these actually doing? Because since I have so many more responses in small business, I can't really tell from this view if my small business segment is doing better or worse than my enterprise, for example. So this is something I want to learn a little bit more about. And so I'm going to choose Explore here and take a look at this data a little bit more. All right, so now I am putting on my mode hat because I want to walk through really something that's awesome that's happening right now. So when a stakeholder is able to explore and open up Visual Explorer, not only are they able to, start manipulating and looking at this data in different ways, but it also exposes exactly how this visualization was built. So I can see what dimensions are up here in the columns, what measures are in rows, and how these layers are being used. So that can kind of help to inform how this analysis was built. But it also gives your stakeholder the information to know what other data is available to them. And that's part of how helping your stakeholders to ask more data-driven questions and to take a data-driven approach to the stories that they're learning from their data can come to play, because I can see right now that I'm comparing the market segment by the NPS scores and the score categories. But I mean, there's other things that I could look at too. Like instead of just segment, I could take the segment out, and maybe instead I want to see like, okay, how are account owners doing? Am I seeing any trends across my different customer success managers that stand out to me? Like this one, Annabelle, this kind of stands out as she has just a lot more responses and seems like more passive than anyone else. So that's kind of just one way that just right from the get-go, Visual Explorer can help your stakeholders ask more questions. Okay, but now I'm going to go back to being my director of customer success character. And
Jennifer?
Yes.
Do you mind if I chime in with my mode hat for a second?
Yes.
One thing also to note about this exploration, everyone, is that any changes that Jennifer makes to this visualization is not going to impact the underlying report. So what's great about that is this is kind of a sandbox, right? For all of your stakeholders who are able to kind of answer their own questions, just like as Jennifer did, drag and drop different dimensions and measures without having to know how to write any SQL. They can come into this exploration tab and they can really manipulate the visualization any way they want, and they can save and share these visualizations as well. So just to note, this won't change the report once Jennifer saves it.
Awesome. Thank you for saying that. Okay, so the question that I wanted to explore a little bit more when I opened this up was, I want to have a better comparison of how, the distribution of detractor, passive, and promoter is for each of my segments. And so I'm going to use a feature in Visual Explorer called Quick Calculations to do that. And right now, this number that's showing up on the top, it's coming from the text layer here, and it's just showing the aggregate number of accounts. But if I use the quick calculation option and choose % of total, now we see something different. And this is like time for the mode hat again, because I want to explain why we're seeing a number 1 now for all of our bars, because that's not my end goal. But with the quick calculation, I chose the % of total option. But once I selected it, the way it was calculated, or the direction that % of total is being calculated by default, was set to table down. And so what that means is that the calculation was applied going down the table. And since there's nothing else for these bars to compare themselves to except for themselves, they're all showing up as 1. So each bar is 100% of the total. And so what I actually want to change this to is calculate using pane across. And now you'll see that these updated, and they're displaying as decimals. So I'm going to change the format real quick. I'm going to change this % of total to %. Okay, and now I have what I was looking for. And just to kind of make sure this is making sense, when I change the calculate using to pane across, each segment right here is its own pane. And so across enterprise now, it's displaying the % of total enterprise responses at the top for each score category. So 52 plus 20.6 plus 26.9, that equals 100%. And then, for mid-market, these three added together would equal 100%. And so now, I'm able to see really what the breakdown is for each segment. So do you have something to say, Johnny?
I do. Okay. I think one other note about quick calculations, I think this is great because previously in Mode's quick charts, you'd have had to do this using either a calculated field or at the SQL layer, whereas here in Visual Explorer, you can just click that drop down on the measure you want to quickly calculate, and you can choose between a few different calculation options, which Jennifer just showed you there.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so now, as the stakeholder, director of customer success, what is kind of catching my eye is that for enterprise, we have much less detractors than we do in either mid-market or small business, only 52%. And we actually have the highest rate of promoters in enterprise as well. And so I kind of thought at a glance that maybe the small business promoter was the highest percentage-wise, but it turns out that that's enterprise. And so this, makes me a little bit curious. And when I hover over the promoter bar here, I can see the number of responses here, and I'm reminded that, okay, this is only 17 responses. So it's not a huge data set. So there's a chance that maybe, a good chunk of those 17 responses all came from the same customer, or maybe they were all working with the same customer success manager. And so it could be skewing the data a little bit. So if I wanted to take a little bit of a closer look into that to answer that question, I'll just click on the bar and choose view data. And now it's actually showing me the table with all of those records. So I can see the 17 promoter responses. And I'm just going to check a couple of those columns. So I want to check the account owner here. And this is the customer success manager assigned to the account. And I can see that there's a pretty good mixture of people here. So I'm disproving the thought that it could be just one excellent customer success manager standing out over the rest. And then also for the account name, I see these are, I think, all different accounts, all different customers. And so that's also good. That means that, we're getting great NPS scores across a variety of our clients. But when I'm looking at this, the other thing that is now kind of catching my eye is days in onboarding. And I can see there's a pretty big range here from 177 days to 82 days. And so, I guess I'm curious to know how days in onboarding could be connected to the NPS and if it plays a role. So I am going to close out of here and go back to my report. And you'll see, like, when I go back to the report, I have the option to save the exploration. And as Johnny mentioned, even if I do save this, it's not replacing the visualization in the report. It's just saving the exploration that I could go back to later. Oh, there was a problem. Okay, so now when I'm back at my report, I'm looking at these adoption metrics because I'm curious now about this. Like, why is it when the average days in onboarding goes down that our seat adoption goes up? And I don't see any information right now related to NPS or product usage. But I feel like there might be a connection there. So I'm gonna bring in my data analyst and see if Johnny can help me learn more about this data. So Johnny, can you help me answer some questions about my data here?
Yeah, hi Jennifer, more than happy to help. I am a data analyst after all. What are you hoping to learn?
Well, so I'm trying to learn more about our customers, and I want to know kind of how these adoption metrics and the days in onboarding, how they relate and if they relate to NPS at all. So I'm curious, like, why when the days in onboarding go down, why does the seat adoption go up? Because that seems that doesn't seem intuitive to me. So I'm curious about that. And then I'm also curious about how seat adoption compares to product usage, because I don't see that in the report right now. And I'm curious if more product usage also relates to seat adoption.
Definitely. Yeah, I can certainly look into that for you. Before I do, it'd be helpful to get a little bit more context on this so I can be sure to give you the most helpful information. And we're in Act 2, everyone. I understand you want to look at product usage and how it compares to seat adoption across segments. Is there a specific decision you're trying to make once you get this information?
That's a great question. I guess right now I was kind of curious about it, but I think you're right that I should probably have a question in mind or a decision in mind so I know how to use this data. I think it would be really great to know is, if the product usage, if that is kind of helps us figure out who our power users are, and if they also tend to be the people with high NPS scores. I think what I am needing to know, and I want to equip my team to know, is who they should be spending their time reaching out to in their book of business, and how they should reach out to them based off of the situation.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I can certainly help you identify those power users and who your CSMs should be reaching out to. Let me take this back and do some quick analysis for you using Mode's Visual Explorer. I'll be back soon. Okay, I'll walk away from Jennifer's virtual office here. And
now we're in Act 3.
Act 3 begins. Okay, everyone. So Jennifer asked a few questions to me, the data analyst. And as she said before, every story starts with a question. So I'll begin my great story with my own question, which is, where do I want to begin? Well, before I go and wrangle any more data in SQL, I think I'm going to start on this dashboard that Jennifer just shared with me, doing my own explorations of the dashboard that she's referring to in order for me to glean some insights from it. So Jennifer, I'll go ahead and share my screen here. So cool. So I'll go ahead and, maybe this particular visualization stood out to Jennifer. Maybe I'll explore this, or if I want to, I can just come into this table and hit explore, and I can create my own Visual Explorer from scratch. So to start this off, I like to say that a wise man, Ben Stancil, once said at a data conference last summer, when telling a story with data, you got to do something provocative. You really got to get the people going. And in order for Jennifer to make a decision, we need to use the Visual Explorer to do something provocative. So I'll start by dropping a few dimensions and measures in here and slicing this a little bit just to kind of start to create something that is a little more provocative. So I'll drag maybe segment into columns. I'll also try and slice this by feature usage rate. And then I'll take my accounts and drag this in here. So what we're seeing here is that it looks like the small business folks are using the product a lot. And that might be why they're adopting their seats so quickly. So let's use the Visual Explorer to add another dimension here to really illuminate the whole story for Jennifer. I'll take onboarding cohort and drop that into columns. So just like that, we can see the majority of customers with high usage are in onboarding within 50 days. So less than 50 days, we have a lot of folks with high usage in the small business sector. So if we want folks to onboard quicker, we need them to use and get into our tool, which seems simple enough, right? But maybe the enterprise and mid-market customers aren't being trained properly on our tool. This could be something for Jennifer to ponder. So I'll save this exploration and I'll Slack it to her to get her thinking on this. So I'll save this and I'll share this link in Slack with Jennifer. Cool. While she's doing that, let's combine these two analyses, NPS and feature usage in SQL, to figure out who our power users and champions are. Remember Jennifer's second question there. So first, I'll create a report, which I've already done. And I'll create a table using the Visual Explorer to figure out who my champions are. Folks with maybe a net promoter score of 10. So I'll drag a few dimensions and measures in here just to start my analysis. We want to look at NPS of at least 10. So just the folks who have a really high NPS score. So these are going to be our champions. I'll drag measure values in here just to start showing this a little bit. Maybe NPS into measure values, show this as average. I don't know, maybe we want to drag feature usage in here too. Maybe show this as an average as well. If we want to sort this descending, we can do that. Boom, we got a table. Okay, it looks all right, but this isn't really gonna show Jennifer what to do. I mean, yeah, sure, with just a few clicks, I've got this table with my champions. These are the people who are using it a lot and have a high NPS score. But what about these folks who might not be using the tool very much and they have a really high NPS score? So they really like the tool, but maybe they don't know quite how to use it. So how do I use the Visual Explorer to tell a story to Jennifer based on this table? Well, remember, I want to get the people going. I want to get Jennifer going. I want to invoke some sort of action. So let's make it compelling. So I'll start by creating a calculated field. I'll add another Visual Explorer here, and I'll create a calculated field called reach out. And what this reach out calculated field is going to do is it's basically going to say, if my NPS score is high, but we have low usage, we have a champion with low usage. If my NPS score is low and my feature usage is high, then we have a power user with low NPS. So I went ahead and created that. And I want to start visualizing this for Jennifer. So I want to show feature usage by NPS. So I'll drag those into my visualization here. So I'll drag NPS into columns, show this as an average, and then maybe feature usage into rows. And then what we're building here, remember, is we're trying to invoke some kind of decision. So I'm going to drag reach out into color and show you what happens here. So I'll drag the overall opportunities in here, maybe show this as detail, and boom, we have a visualization. So as you can see, we have our green users who are champions with low usage, and maybe these are folks that Jennifer's team needs to reach out to. And then on the left here, we have these power users with low NPS. So remember that, you know, these are kind of the folks who are using the tool a lot, but they don't really like it. And that could be a training issue, right? We might want the CSMs to get in front of our customers and start training them on the tool. And these are the customers that Jennifer should probably reach out to first. But what about our bigger customers? What if we want to see, okay, maybe this is great, but who should we really focus on, and who's going to give us, you know, the most bang for our buck here? Let's drag ARR into size to really showcase the true power of the Visual Explorer here. So I'm going to put on my mode hat for just a second. And as you can see, we've leveraged a lot of this layers section here. We've leveraged color, size, and detail. And what this is doing is it's adding dimensions to our data set, right? As you can see, we have size in here, and now we have all of these, we can see that these green accounts are a little bit bigger than some of the yellow accounts. So maybe we want to focus on our champions with low usage first. So I'll definitely reach out to Jennifer and talk to her about that. But before I do that, let's split this up by CSM to showcase who should be doing what on her team. So I'll go ahead and duplicate this chart. And maybe you want to drag out ARR. Maybe we just want to look at this by account owner and segment. So I'll take account owner and put this into rows, maybe slice this by segment. Cool, we have another visualization here. And this shows all of her CSMs and all of their segments based on who are our champions and who are our power users. And I think this is going to be really helpful for Jennifer. So this looks good. Let's add these to a report and go meet with Jennifer to tell our story. So I'll go ahead and add both of these to the report. And let's go talk to Jennifer. So I'll walk over to Jennifer's virtual desk. Knock, knock, knock.
Hey, Johnny, what did you find out with your data analysis?
Yeah, hey, Jennifer. So I've got some analysis for you. Would you mind if I walk you through this report in Mode that I built for you?
Yeah, please do.
Cool. So I've constructed a brief story for you, Jennifer. Remember that exploration from Mode that I slacked you earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it appears we have a few users who could use some training in order to increase our seed adoption. I know that's a major thing that you all track on your team. So these two visualizations tell the entire story. In the top visualization, you'll notice we have broken down Net Promoter Score by feature usage. And we've highlighted where we have high NPS, but low feature usage, and high feature usage, so high usage of our tool, but low NPS. So I think, you know, it might make sense to start reaching out to some of these folks, these power users with low NPS who are not liking the tool because they're using it a lot. And then you might also want to reach out to the folks who are champions with low usage because, you know, they seem to like it, they're just not really using it. So I think it might be worth starting some trainings. And in addition to this, I've gone ahead and broken out all of your CSMs and a couple to call out here. So Annabelle has a lot of champions with low usage in the small business sector. So it might be worth Annabelle reaching out to some of these folks. In addition to that, we've got Kelly at the bottom here, who has a few folks who are power users with low NPS. So I'd recommend starting here to increase seed adoption. Any thoughts from your side?
Wow, this is awesome. Thank you, Johnny. I think the question that I have is with the first visualization. Can you explain what the different size dots mean and how I should factor that into my decision?
Absolutely. So I added ARR as a size to this visualization just to show you how impactful some of your moves are going to be, because we have some bigger customers who are champions with low usage over here. And it might be worth starting in this side just because the size of the dot just means how much money they're giving us annually. Okay. And so it might be worth starting in this sector here.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is super helpful. I think, you know, I really appreciate you taking the time to build these out, and I'm going to be able to take these back to my team. And I think everyone's going to have a really clear idea of where they should start and where they should spend their energy as we plan out our next set of outreach. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And scene.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and we're going to kind of recap some of what we walked through and just highlight some best practices for data-driven storytelling and how we put those into play. So I think, as you know, Johnny said in his demo, that every great story starts with a question. That's great. And so if you are starting to create a data-driven story, or you're tasked with creating a report or showing something with your data, it's always good to start with some good questions too. And we like to keep in mind that your audience, keeping your audience in mind is going to help you orient, you know, what questions to be asking and how you should be thinking about the data and the story that they're looking for. So these are some questions to keep in mind about your audience. In this case, we answered these. So Johnny's audience was me in the role of Director of Customer Success. What I needed to know was why seat adoption goes up as days in onboarding goes down, and how seat adoption compares to feature usage. That's what I had requested to learn about. But he also found out what the decision I was trying to make was, which was what actions should the CSMs take and who should they reach out to first. And as you can see from the analysis he provided me, he really prioritized what I was actually trying to make a decision about. Had he not asked me further and gone deeper into what I was really trying to learn and glean from the data. That first report that he sent and sent me via Slack could have been, as far as this analysis went, and I would not have had this fantastic report that helped me know how to move forward in my business that we got to. And of course, okay, what biases are they bringing to the table? So always keep bias in mind. In this case, I had a slight bias that the enterprise customers would be the people with the greatest product usage, and turned out to not be the case. So always keep your audience in mind when you're building out your data-driven stories with Visual Explorer. And with that, we would love to take any questions that you may have about the scenario we walked through, or, maybe more importantly about Visual Explorer. So we'll take some time to look at those. Yeah, we'll put on our mode hats. And then while we're waiting for some of your questions to come in, we do have a poll. We would love to know, what you found most interesting in this webinar, if there was anything that you found particularly helpful or interesting. So you can take a second to fill that out and also submit your questions. All right, and so it looks like we have a couple of questions that came in so far, and Johnny already answered them individually, but I think it'd be great to answer them for everybody. So somebody was curious if decimals can be rounded. Would you like to answer that, Johnny?
Yes, so in that format tab, there's a window that you can pop open at the very bottom of the format tab to add or remove decimal places.
Yeah, and I'll show that too. So in the format tab here, if we wanted to
So if you click on percent there, and then more
okay.
formats.
More formats. Okay.
And this is where you change the decimal places.
Perfect. Oh, and I think I must have done something wrong. Oops. I did that for the decimal symbol. Okay. Did I do something wrong there, Johnny? Did you see decimal places?
Oh, it could be the pane that you need to change.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay, so yeah, so I first was doing it on the axis level, but since we have panes here, perhaps we need to do it down here. Yeah, and now you can see that the decimal place was to 1. So if I bump that down to 0 and apply and close, now you can see how our percentages have updated to not have any decimals. All right, and Nancy, I think you can close the poll. All right, and look, oh, the poll, okay. I didn't see all of their answers, but I saw there was a pretty good variety. So it looks like, everybody is different.
Even split.
Yeah, which is kind of cool to see. All right, any other questions here? There are 2 more questions. Do you have a comparison of this product with other visualization tools like Tableau, QuickSight, etc.? Nancy, do we have any research? Perhaps we have a resource like that that we can follow up with after this webinar. And does the product provide data access controls? You should be able to see only your region sales data and not others. Oh, Johnny, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways that you can provide data access controls. The 2 layers of permissioning in Mode start at the database connection level, and then you can also set collection level permissions as well. I can follow up on this one in the chat with links to our help docs.
Awesome. Okay, and Okay, and then so Nancy did say, yes, we can get a comparison, but also wanted to make sure that the comparisons won't have all a Visual Explorer directly compared since it is so new. Awesome. Well, I think we have answered all of. Oh, we had one other question. Could you compare data with the year before in the same bar graph?
Yes, so I answered this one. You can either do this in a calculated field or by adding the year dimension to the color layer, which will split it up by color.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We appreciate your questions and your feedback, and we look forward to seeing you at a future Mode webinar. Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.